Dearest gentle readers, if we can learn any lessons from this season of the ton, it is that relationships truly make the world go round. But outside of the intrigues and the ballroom gowns of matchmaking, the wild world has its own assortment of relationships between and across species. Let us see what ecology has in mind for symbiotic relationships.
Hi there! Dr. Maria Wheeler-Dubas here, Science Education Outreach Manager at FIPS. So a symbiotic relationship is a sort of long-standing interaction or association between two or more different species. Now, we humans like to use the word relationship to describe the interactions between two separate individuals, but a symbiotic relationship is explicitly between two or more separate species. And that relationship usually goes back for thousands and thousands of years, if not many generations. The first kind of symbiotic relationship is mutualism. Mutualism is a type of symbiotic relationship where both species in the relationship benefit. Flowers and their pollinators are a classic example of mutualism. A flower benefits from pollinators because the plant's pollen is moved from one plant to another plant, where the pollen can then go on to the next stage of plant reproduction. The pollinator benefits because it acquired some sort of a food source, such as either nectar or a little bit of the pollen itself. Lichen is also an excellent example of symbiotic relationships. Even though it looks like a single organism, lichens are actually an association between a fungus and either an algae or a cyanobacteria. The fungi benefit from partnering with an organism that can undergo photosynthesis to provide a carbon food source. And the algae or the cyanobacteria benefit from a stable place to live with the fungi. Of course, mutualism is a description of the relationship between species, not just two individuals. But if it were individuals, we could imagine it as, let's say, a young lady forming an understanding with a duke, so that other eligible suitors would take notice of her, and so that the scheming mamas with husband-seeking daughters might assume that this duke is otherwise diverted. A second kind of symbiotic relationship is commensalism. Let this be a lesson to me. Don't walk and talk at the same time. Commensalism is a type of symbiotic relationship where one species benefits and the other is unaffected. An example of commensalism would be orchids growing on the branches of trees. The tree itself is relatively unaffected, but the orchid has a safe place to live. Another example of commensalism would be the relationship between the birds that perch on the backs of large grazing animals like water buffalo or wildebeests and those hoofstock themselves. Oftentimes, the defining interaction between these relationships is the birds waiting for the hoofstock to stir up insects from the ground, which the birds then catch and eat. In this case, the birds benefit while the grazing hoofstock are unaffected. But there are examples of some of those birds actively removing parasites from the large animals. When there are species that help out the large animals like that, we call that situation mutually beneficial. Of course, commensalism is a description of the relationship between two species, not just two individuals. But if it were individuals, an example of this could be if, let's say, your brother has a friend with a guarded manner, but 10,000 a year, and you benefit greatly from the society of his company, but he's completely indifferent to your attentions and is thus unaffected by your presence. And the third kind of symbiotic relationship is everybody's favorite, parasitism. Ticks, mosquitoes, and roundworms are all examples of parasitism, and we are acutely aware that in these examples, one species gains something while the host is negatively impacted. In these examples, the parasite is gaining blood or nutrients from a host, and the host can experience a range of actively harmful effects, from a mild itchy spot to a more severe allergic reaction, all the way up to transmitted diseases or nutritional deficiencies because of the actions of the parasite. Ugh, ain't that just swell? And again, parasitism is a description of the relationship between species, not just two individuals. But if it were individuals, one might also say that an example of parasitism would be the odious, dreaded cousin waiting to inherit the estate because the will skips over the ladies to the next male heir. So whether you're dreaming of mutualism or parasitism, enjoy the wonders of the wild world. And remember, it is a truth to be universally acknowledged that we have a pretty awesome planet. Thank you for joining us, dear reader.